The champagne glass nearly slipped from Emma's fingers as the words floated through the crack in the door. I never wanted to be a father. 6 words. 6 simple words that shattered her world into a million pieces. Just 4 weeks ago, she'd stared at those 2 pink lines with tears of joy. Now, as the party continued around her, Emma pressed her hand against her still flat stomach and felt utterly alone. If you've ever had your life change in an instant, you know exactly how Emma felt in that moment. Stay with me until the end to discover how this unexpected betrayal transformed into something neither Emma nor her husband could have imagined. And if this story resonates with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more emotional journeys that remind us of the resilience of the human spirit. Emma and James had been married for 3 years. They'd met in college, she was studying education, he was in business, and their connection had been immediate. Emma loved James's ambition, his quick wit, and the way he could charm anyone in a room. James loved Emma's warmth, her patience, and how she always saw the best in people. They'd talked about having children someday, but someday had always been a distant concept, something they'd address when they were more established, more ready. The pregnancy hadn't been planned. Emma had been feeling unusually tired for weeks, with occasional bouts of nausea that she'd attributed to stress from her new position as a kindergarten teacher. When she finally took the test, she'd been shocked but quickly overcome with joy. She'd always wanted to be a mother, and though the timing wasn't what they'd planned, she couldn't help but feel this was meant to be. She'd planned to tell James that night, at the holiday party hosted by his company. She'd even bought a tiny pair of baby shoes that she'd wrapped in a small box, tucked safely in her purse. The party was at their friend Michael's expansive home, and Emma had spent hours getting ready, wanting everything to be perfect for the moment she would share her news. Now, standing in the hallway outside Michael's study, Emma felt her world collapsing. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop. She'd been looking for a quiet place to collect her thoughts before finding James to give him the gift. But as she approached the study, she heard her husband's voice, along with Michael's and a few other colleagues. "So when are you and Emma going to start a family?" one of them had asked. "You've been married, what, 3 years now?" There was a pause, and Emma had stopped, curious about James's answer. To be honest, James had replied, his voice slightly slurred from the cocktails, "I never wanted to be a father. Emma knows that. We've talked about it." But they hadn't. Not really. They'd discussed waiting, yes, but James had never once said he didn't want children at all. Emma felt her chest tighten as the conversation continued. "Kids change everything," James went on. "My career is just taking off. I'm not ready to give that up for midnight feedings and soccer practice." The men laughed, and someone changed the subject, but Emma couldn't move. She stood frozen, one hand on her stomach, the other clutching her purse with the tiny shoes inside. How could she have misunderstood so completely? How could she tell him now? Emma slipped away from the door and found the nearest bathroom. She locked herself inside and finally let the tears come. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, her carefully applied makeup now streaked down her face, her eyes red and puffy. What was she going to do? She couldn't hide the pregnancy forever. But how could she bring a child into the world knowing its father didn't want it? Emma splashed cold water on her face and tried to compose herself. She had to get through the rest of the party somehow. She had to pretend everything was fine until she could figure out what to do next. When she emerged from the bathroom, Emma spotted James across the room, laughing with a group of colleagues. He looked so carefree, so unaware that he had just shattered her heart. For a moment, she considered walking straight out the door, but where would she go? What would she say when he came home? Instead, Emma made her way to the bar and asked for a club soda with lime. The bartender gave her a knowing look. A woman refusing alcohol at a party often meant only one thing, but Emma avoided his eyes. She sipped her drink slowly, watching James from across the room, feeling like she was seeing a stranger. Later that night, as they drove home in silence, James reached for her hand. "You were quiet tonight," he said. Everything okay? Emma wanted to scream, to cry, to demand an explanation. Instead, she nodded. Just tired, she said, pulling her hand away to adjust the heat. Long week at school. James accepted this without question, and they drove the rest of the way in silence. Emma stared out the window at the passing streetlights, each one blurring into the next as tears threatened to fall again. How had they come to this point? How had she missed the signs? That night, as James slept peacefully beside her, Emma lay awake, her mind racing. She thought about her options. She could tell him about the pregnancy and hope that seeing those 2 pink lines would change his mind. She could end the pregnancy quietly and pretend it never happened. Or she could leave, raise the child on her own. None of these options felt right. Emma loved James, despite what she'd heard. And she already loved this tiny life growing inside her. How could she choose between them? The next morning, Emma called in sick to work. She couldn't face a room full of 5-year-olds when her own life was in such turmoil. After James left for work, she sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, the pregnancy test in front of her. She needed to talk to someone, but who? Her mother lived across the country, and while they were close, Emma wasn't ready for that conversation yet. Her best friend, Lily, had been traveling for work and was unreachable. Finally, Emma called her older sister, Sarah. Sarah had always been her rock, the person she turned to in times of crisis. Within an hour, Sarah was at her door, arms open wide. "I heard him say it, Sarah," Emma sobbed into her sister's shoulder. "He doesn't want to be a father. What am I going to do?" Sarah led Emma to the couch and sat beside her. "First, you need to breathe," she said, her voice calm and steady. "Then, you need to talk to James. Not about what you overheard, but about the baby. Give him a chance to react to the actual news, not some hypothetical scenario with his work buddies." Emma shook her head. "What if he rejects us? What if he asks me to choose?" Sarah took Emma's hands in hers. "Then you'll make that decision when the time comes. But you can't make decisions based on fear and assumptions. You need to give him a chance." Deep down, Emma knew her sister was right. She needed to talk to James. But the fear of rejection, of seeing disappointment in his eyes when she told him about the baby, was overwhelming. That evening, when James came home, Emma had dinner waiting. She'd set the table with their wedding china, lit candles, and even put on the dress she knew he loved. James looked surprised but pleased. "What's the occasion?" he asked, kissing her cheek. Emma took a deep breath. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. James's smile faltered. "That sounds serious." They sat down at the table, and Emma pushed her plate aside, her appetite gone. "James," she began, "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. Emma watched James's face, trying to read his reaction. Surprise, certainly. But was that fear in his eyes? Disappointment? "How?" he finally asked. "I thought you were on the pill." "I was," Emma said. "But remember when I had that stomach flu last month? The doctor said it might have affected the pill's effectiveness." James nodded slowly, processing this information. "How far along are you?" "About 4 weeks," Emma said. "I found out just before the party." James ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Emma knew meant he was stressed. "This is unexpected," he said. Emma felt tears welling up again. "I know it's not what we planned," she said. "But I thought. I hoped you might be happy." James looked at her then, really looked at her, and saw the pain in her eyes. "Emma, what's wrong? There's something else, isn't there?" Emma couldn't hold it in any longer. "I heard you," she blurted out. "At the party. I heard you tell Michael and the others that you never wanted to be a father." James's face paled. "You heard that?" Emma nodded, tears now flowing freely. Were you ever going to tell me? Or were you just going to let me believe that, someday, would eventually come? James reached across the table for her hand, but Emma pulled away. Emma, please, he said. Let me explain. Explain what? Emma demanded. That you've been lying to me for our entire relationship? That you knew how much I wanted children but led me on anyway? James shook his head. It's not like that, he insisted. I wasn't lying to you. I was lying to myself. Emma looked at him, confused. What do you mean? James sighed deeply. My father was not a good man, he said. You know that. What you don't know is how terrified I am of becoming him. Emma had met James's father only once, at their wedding. He had been cold, distant, and had left early. James rarely spoke of him. The truth is, James continued, I do want children. With you. But every time I think about being a father, I hear his voice in my head, telling me I'll fail, that I'll hurt them the way he hurt me. Emma felt her anger softening. Why didn't you tell me this? Because it's embarrassing, James admitted. What kind of man is afraid of his own father, even after all these years? What kind of man is so insecure that he can't trust himself to be better? Emma moved her chair closer to his. A human one, she said softly. James, your father's failures don't have to be yours. You are not him. James looked at her, his eyes wet with unshed tears. How can you be so sure? Because I know you, Emma said. I've seen how you are with our nieces and nephews, with my students when you visit my classroom. You're patient and kind and loving. Those aren't things you learned from your father. Those are things that are uniquely you. James was quiet for a long moment. I'm scared, Emma, he finally admitted. What if I'm not good at this? What if I let you down? Let our child down? Emma took his hand, and this time he didn't pull away. We'll figure it out together, she promised. That's what partners do. That night, as they lay in bed, James placed his hand gently on Emma's stomach. I'm sorry I hurt you, he whispered. I never meant to. Emma covered his hand with hers. I know, she said. But no more secrets, okay? No more saying one thing to me and another to your friends. James nodded. No more secrets, he agreed. And no more letting fear make decisions for me. The next few months were not easy. James started seeing a therapist to work through his fears about fatherhood and his complicated relationship with his own father. Emma had her own anxieties to deal with, morning sickness that lasted all day, concerns about being a good mother, worries about balancing her career with parenthood. But they faced these challenges together. James went to every doctor's appointment, read every parenting book Emma brought home, and even started a journal for their unborn child, writing letters about his hopes and dreams for their future. As Emma's belly grew, so did James's confidence. He painted the nursery, assembled the crib, and spent hours talking to the baby through Emma's stomach. The man who had once declared he never wanted to be a father was now eagerly counting down the days until he would become one. 6 months into the pregnancy, Emma received a call from James in the middle of the school day. Meet me at home, he said, his voice urgent. It's important. Worried, Emma rushed home to find James standing in the driveway, a nervous smile on his face. What's going on? She asked. Is everything okay? James took her hand and led her to the garage. I've been thinking, he said. About what kind of father I want to be. About the memories I want our child to have. He opened the garage door to reveal a beautiful wooden rocking chair. I made this, he said proudly. For you and the baby. My father never made anything for me, never created anything with his hands. I want our child to know that their father built things, created things, out of love. Emma ran her fingers over the smooth wood, tears in her eyes. It's beautiful, she whispered. James knelt beside her, his hand on her rounded belly. I was wrong, Emma," he said. "When I said I never wanted to be a father. The truth is, I've never wanted anything more. I was just too afraid to admit it, even to myself." 3 months later, their daughter, Lily, was born. As James held her for the first time, his face a mixture of awe and terror, Emma watched the last of his fears melt away. This tiny person, with her father's eyes and her mother's nose, had done what years of love and therapy had started. She had healed a wound that had been festering for generations. James became the father he had never had, present, loving, involved. He changed diapers without complaint, got up for midnight feedings, and sang off-key lullabies that made Emma's heart swell with love. He was not perfect, no parent is, but he was trying, every day, to be better than the day before. 5 years later, as they celebrated Lily's birthday with their second child, a son named Ethan, on the way, Emma found herself thinking back to that night at the party. How close they had come to losing everything because of fear and miscommunication. How different their lives might have been if she hadn't found the courage to confront James, if he hadn't found the strength to confront his past. "What are you thinking about?" James asked, coming up behind her as she watched Lily blow out her candles. Emma leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth of his chest against her back. "I'm thinking about how lucky we are," she said. "How one conversation changed everything." James wrapped his arms around her, his hands resting on her pregnant belly. "Not luck," he corrected gently. "Courage. Your courage to speak the truth, my courage to face it. That's what saved us." Emma turned in his arms to face him. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Becoming a father when you weren't sure you were ready?" James looked over at Lily, who was now opening presents with gleeful abandon, her laughter filling the room. "Not for a single second," he said. "Being Lily's father, being your husband, being this little one's dad," he patted her belly, "it's the greatest gift I've ever received. And to think I almost threw it away because I was afraid." Emma stood on her tiptoes to kiss him. "Fear is a powerful thing," she said. "But love is stronger." And in that moment, surrounded by family and friends, with one child celebrating her birthday and another growing inside her, Emma knew that those 6 words she'd overheard at the party had not been the end of her story, but the beginning. A beginning that had led them here, to this imperfect but beautiful life they had built together. Sometimes, the words that break our hearts are the very ones that lead us to healing. Sometimes, the moments that test us the most are the ones that reveal our true strength. And sometimes, the fears that threaten to keep us apart are the very ones that, when faced together, bring us closer than we ever thought possible. If Emma's story has touched your heart today, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories of hope, resilience, and the transformative power of love. Remember, it's not the challenges we face that define us, but how we choose to face them, together.